Jenny, good morning to you.
Good morning, Clive.
Thank you
for having me on the programme.
Well, thanks for joining us. This is being described now as a sort of emergency situation, a major incident in London. Is that the right description, do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. Sadiq Khan's, that showed good leadership here. Essentially, what that means is the emergency services can't guarantee a normal level of response. And what we've been seeing has been quite terrifying, some of the figures that have been coming out. We've lost nearly 80,000 dead, and that, if we had to think about that as an image, a very tragic image, that would be the same number of people that you could we crammed into the Olympic Stadium, closing in 2012. It's an Olympic Stadium's worth of people. But the very worrying thing is that we've had over increase of about 50% excess increase of cases since Christmas. And in London in particular, which is why the emergency incident was called, that was just basically because London is becoming overwhelmed. Every hospital is becoming full. Some are already full. Every bed they're now turning into trying to get intensive care capacity. So we've turned theatres into areas where we can ventilate patients. We're turning every available bed that we can to try and ensure that we can offer the safest care we can to people coming into the front door. And the message is that people must still come to hospital if they are sick and need support. They absolutely must. We are there for them. And they must also come to hospital if they have got things like strokes and heart attacks, all the emergency situations that need to be, all the emergency conditions that people have that they would normally be coming into, the flu that we would normally get in the winter. We've got all the winter pressures, plus we've got COVID on top. It's extraordinary times.
You can imagine why, though, if people might once upon a time have gone to A&E with a pain or something, that they just feel, well, actually, am I taking a risk turning up to a hospital at all?
Well, if they have got something wrong with them that they are worried about, could be an emergency condition that needs sorting out, they must come into hospital. However, if it's something that they think their GP can deal with, or it is something that can wait, then I would not go to hospital. But you must do the messages to come in as if you think you have got a severe condition that needs sorting out. And also, what we've got to really focus on here is there's been rightfully a lot of attention on vaccines recently. We had the Moderna one approved today. We had the Oxford one on Monday. But what we've got to remember is that it's going to take time for those vaccines all to be rolled out. And this virus has outrun us. It's going faster than we can. We can't vaccinate ourselves out of this situation. Eventually, we'll be able to. But at the moment, the most important thing, the thing that needs immediate action is to stop this thing spreading in the community. And that's what I'm worried about, because I think at the moment we've got lockdown light.
Well, I wanted to ask you about that, and there are reports in the newspapers this morning suggesting the government are going to be much firmer with their messaging and be tougher to really try to persuade people to stay at home. Is that what is needed? Is there anything more that you think we can be doing then?
Oh, yes, there's a lot more that we can be doing. Just touching on that, we have to ask ourselves, why are the roads still busy? Why is it busier than the lockdown in March when actually we're in a much worse situation? Because I'm sure you know, Clive, that we've passed the peak of what the numbers that we had in April.
Yeah.
But in addition to that, we've got the winter. In addition to that, our beds are much fuller. So that's the problem. And we've also got teachers telling us that schools are busier. So with that, but to answer your question, we've got to be getting homeless people off the streets. We've got to be giving people proper support when they're told to socially isolate. How can people properly socially isolate when they might have COVID if actually, they've got no money, their business depends on it? It's all very well saying that, but I think that the government ought to be doing some kind of, immediate furlough, at least for the next month. That means that, virtually everybody can actually just pay their expenses, because in the end, that's going to be worth it, because it's going to save lives. Not enough money is in the system to ensure that people don't absolutely feel that they need to go to work, because more people are going out to work now than they did in March. And the test and trace system, Serco, what has happened there to test and trace? Nobody's talking about it really, because it's manifestly not, it has not stood up to what it should have been. So there are lots of things that we could be doing, and it mainly has to do with support. And I'll tell you what, Clive, families are turning up. Whole families are turning up in our hospitals who are infected with the coronavirus because they can't easily self-isolate when they've got it. And they are often families where, there's a lot of, deprivation out there, people who are finding it really difficult to meet. Those are the people that need a lot more support than they're getting. So yes, when you ask me what more could we be doing, there's loads more that the government needs to be doing.
I wonder if people are either in denial or actually just don't realise the severity. It's one thing for us to say these words, but I'm not really seeing very powerful images, the kind that we saw in northern Italy a little over a year ago, under a year ago. We don't seem to be seeing that. I wonder if perhaps there needs to be a more powerful point made. Look, this is what it looks like inside a hospital at the moment.
Well, I mean, Clive, you're right, of course. I do think what people are trying... Now, I was criticised for kind of speaking out quite publicly on this in the beginning of the first wave, because I was extremely worried about what we were seeing in Italy. And I think there's been so much that we could have done in the summer when the R number went down. We should have locked down earlier. What we've seen on the televisions in the last week is we've seen that cameras have had much more access to hospitals. There have been some very good programs on where cameras have gone in to places like UCL. They've gone into Milton Keynes Hospital. They've gone into Northwick Park Hospital. There's a number of different hospitals where cameras have gone in, and they've given the picture of how busy it is. What we're trying to avoid is what's happening in Italy. What happened in Italy. And at the moment, what the hospitals are desperately trying to do is to clear as many beds as they can so that we can ventilate people or give them oxygen support. So we call that non-invasive ventilation, because actually that can get a whole lot of people out of COVID as well. That can really help them. You don't have to ventilate everybody. Very often you give people oxygen, or you can give them non-invasive ventilation, and you can get a long way to turning them around from COVID. So at the moment, we're not in that nightmare scenario, because that is a nightmare scenario. Just because what the NHS is doing is it's stopped its elective work, it's cancelled all outpatients, it's freeing up every single bed. The government's now at last today decided that at last NHS staff are going to be the top priority. They should have been the top priority for vaccine right from the beginning. And the hospitals are really trying to redeploy every single available member of staff to the front line to actually help look after patients as they come in through the front door. So there's this massive reorganisation going on to try and prevent exactly the scenario that you have. Are we going to do it? We don't know. We haven't reached peak. The next 1 to 2 to 3 weeks, that's what everybody is worrying, that, what are we going to see if the rate of acceleration doesn't start coming down now, if we don't start seeing the effects of lockdown coming in soon? That's what we're all worried about.